Now, it is time to bring you a story. We're talking about a lot about health this morning, aren't we?
Lots of health stories, yeah.
Pharmacy workers in particular say they've seen an increase in violent crime, verbal and physical abuse in their high street stores over the last year.
Yeah, a recent survey by a union representing pharmacists has revealed that the majority of their community pharmacists now feel really unsafe at work. Going to talk to a couple of them in a moment, but first, Chloe Hayward has this report.
Vicious attacks, abusive outbursts. The violence in community pharmacies is now leaving many pharmacists terrified. Chand had a 6-inch knife held to her throat.
Initially, when he held the knife to me, it was maybe a couple of inches from my chest, and I did just freeze. I could hear my colleagues telling me to come over and pleading with the attacker to let me go over to them. But in the first instance, I couldn't move because I was scared.
Chand's attacker wanted medicine that he didn't have a prescription for.
I actually felt quite sorry for my attacker because, as opposed, he just seemed very desperate. And it was a shame because I actually wanted to help him.
The PDA, a union representing pharmacists, says the majority of their members feel unsafe at work. In a recent survey, 89% of over 500 community pharmacists that responded said they had seen an increase in the number of violent incidents in the last year.
We're already seeing a situation where more and more pharmacists are considering whether they want to work in community pharmacy because of the working conditions, and violence and abuse is definitely a contributory factor of that.
What are your pharmacists telling you when it comes to the violence they're experiencing in their pharmacies at the moment?
So pharmacists tell us that a lot of the cause of the violence and abuse that they face is to do with waiting times that people are experiencing. People are really worried and anxious if they're caring for someone, or they've not been able to access another part of the healthcare service.
Police forces around the UK have noted this marked increase in violence in pharmacies, even though the government has a zero-tolerance policy for abuse in any healthcare setting.
No, I believe the numbers are really underreported from the pharmacies, and I think the challenge is they provide a real community service and supporting some really vulnerable victims, whether it's a mental health or an addiction issue, and I think they're really keen to support those clients and don't want to see police action taken against them. In terms of guidance for them, I think there's an opportunity to look at around technical options such as body-worn video, use of CCTV and kind of panic alarms, and also where pharmacies can work together and work with local doctors where they've got regular offenders that are causing problems, what they can do to try and help manage their behaviour going forward.
A quick police response saved Chand from physical injury, but the mental scars linger.
I didn't sleep well for the first while, and since then I do experience more panic attacks when dealing with more aggressive or loud patients. Every day I hear of more and more people just leaving.
Chloe Hayward, BBC News.
Well, joining us now is Paul Day, who's from the Pharmacists Defence Association. Hi, Paul.
Hiya.
A union representing the industry. And Abby Fussell, who's a pharmacist. And Abby, you know this only too well. You were physically attacked at work. Tell us what happened.
It was quite early of a Monday morning and a patient came in for their medication. We obviously hadn't had a delivery at that time. He became quite upset about it and quickly turned aggressive. He punched just a hole in the screen that was our protective screen. He began more aggressive at that point, so I pressed our panic button to signal the police. He continued to throw verbal abuse at us, punched the screen again, and then he threw a chair at me, which hit me in the head. I collapsed on the floor. Then you can see it in the clip.
This is the video. You see
Yes.
the chair flying there. I mean, that must have been terrifying.
Yeah, no, it was. I didn't even realise what happened at the time. I was more aware of my staff that was with me, that they were quite disturbed by it. So my focus was to calm them down before I actually realised, oh, it was a chair that hit me, not just, I thought it was a basket or something.
Gosh.
And Abby, what have you done since then? How did you manage to get back into working again?
It was difficult. I decided to go back to work quite quickly after the event because I thought, get back on the horse and do it straight away. But I'm definitely much more cautious now than I was before. I'm much more aware of my surroundings and where I position myself at work. If I'm able to have confidential conversations at distance, or whether I need to be closer to patients. It took a long time for me to be comfortable to, not be nervous to go to work.
So you've always got that in the back of your mind now, in a way that...
Always aware of it.
And did you before it happened?
Not really. It's not something that you really think of when you go to university to study. It's not something that comes to mind. Oh, I better worry about being attacked at work.
Paul, I mean, it's an interesting point, isn't it? I mean, do all pharmacists now need training? Is that part of their studies? I don't know.
Well, I mean, they shouldn't need to. Nobody should have to go to work questioning whether they'll get home safely at the end of a shift. The specific details of Abby's case are extreme and unique, but it's a trend. And what we're seeing, we represent employed and locum pharmacists across all parts of the NHS. We're talking specifically today about community pharmacy, or as members or viewers might see it, chemist shops. Mm-hmm. And it's an increasing trend, and it obviously ranges from sort of rudeness to extreme physical assault. It's becoming far more frequent and moving along that spectrum, and that's our concern.
Why is it getting worse? Is it simply the pandemic? Did that increase tensions, perhaps, made everybody feel a little bit more under pressure when they go into their pharmacy? Or is it things that we're reporting on now, like medicine shortages, people running out of patients if they desperately need some type of prescription or medication?
Well, there's different flashpoints which will set people off, but none of them are excuses for assaulting somebody at work or being rude or abusive to someone at work. Part of the issue is medicines are not a normal item of commerce. It looks like a shop, but actually it's part of the NHS. It's a health setting. And whereas a greengrocer may take 60 seconds to put some apples in a bag, what Abby and her colleagues are doing is making sure that medicines are safe for a patient, and that agitates people. So the government and employers could do more to help people understand that community pharmacy is part of the health service and not a shop. And so that expectation frustrates people.
That's a really interesting thought. I mean, let's say again, nothing excuses any of this. Absolutely. I'm just trying to think of the reasons why it might be happening, though. And Abby, I'm interested because you're a locum, so you work in between different businesses, different shops, different pharmacies. Is there an issue that that's happening more and more, and that therefore maybe staff don't have the same sort of personal connection and knowledge of their customers that they did? Is that a factor?
I think potentially there's a lot more demand for us. We're a lot more accessible than perhaps other healthcare settings, so people do come to us a lot, which puts pressure on us to not only do our job and make sure medicines are safe for the people waiting, but we also have the other people waiting who want to see us and talk to us about other things. So it becomes, spread too thin maybe a little bit.
Do you get people coming in who are frustrated that they can't see a doctor maybe as easily as they could in the past, can't get to the GP, so they come to you instead?
Yeah, that's definitely something that's come up. We're here to try and help take the burden off of a stretched GP service, but then that also comes down to how far can we stretch ourselves as well. So we do find that a lot of people get frustrated.
Paul, really briefly, stretched too thin.
Yeah, I mean, employers have reduced staffing over the last 5 years. Staffing in community pharmacy is down 14%, but at the same time, since the pandemic, 31% of patients are more likely to go to the community pharmacy. Now, community pharmacy is a gem in the NHS. It's the most accessible part of the health system. Even if you haven't registered with your GP, you can meet and ask advice from a highly qualified health professional in the heart of your community without an appointment. And the NHS, the government, should be doing more to utilise that, because it adds value. But also employers. One of the other issues, we're obviously the union, and what we find is that often there seems to be no consequence for being rude, being abusive, threatening, or even perhaps not the assault, but the lower level stuff. And we want all employers to actually do a risk assessment of each of their branches for all times of day, because it can be different late at night, for example. Put in place measures, but also be very clear, zero tolerance of any of this. Zero. These are the key workers we all clapped for on a Thursday night.
Thank you very much indeed, both of you, for coming in. I'm glad to see you back at work and doing okay, but thanks for sharing your story with us this morning. Thank you, Paul, as well.
Thank you
so much. And it's one of the things that Sally's going to be talking to Sajid Javid, the Health Secretary, about in a few minutes' time.
Yeah, he's coming up in just a couple of minutes, but now it's time.